5 luxury SUVs you can get in and out of without wincing, that cost less every year to keep on the road than plenty of ordinary family sedans. With the actual repair figures, the actual warranty language, and the one sentence somebody is going to say to you in a finance office that can cost you $1,200 if you nod along. That is the whole deal, and I'm going to earn it item by item. I've spent my working life with these things on a lift. Wheels off, under trays down, hands on the parts that decide whether ownership is pleasant or ruinous. And the thing that still surprises people when I say it out loud is that a premium badge on the tailgate tells you almost nothing about what the vehicle will cost you to keep. Some of the cheapest vehicles I have ever maintained wore very expensive badges. Some of the worst money pits I have ever bolted back together were mid-priced family crossovers with an ambitious engine in them. So this list is built on 2 filters, not 1. First, can a person with a stiff hip, a replaced knee, or shoulders that don't love reaching get in and out of it repeatedly without turning every errand into a physical event? Second, what does the thing actually cost once the free coffee at the dealership stops being free? 3 things to hold on to while we go. Number 2 on this list is, on paper, the cheapest luxury SUV in America to keep running, first out of 11 in its class. And it has one design decision inside it that I think disqualifies it for a lot of the people watching this. Number 3 has a maintenance figure so low it looks like a typo, and 2 respected sources flatly disagree about whether that figure means anything at all. I'll tell you which one I trust and why, and number 5 arrives with the longest warranty in the luxury business printed on the window sticker, 10 years, except that the 10 years belongs to the person who bought it new and not to you. We'll get to all 3. Let's start with what cheap to maintain actually means, because most people have it backwards. Here is the principle everything else on this list rests on. Vehicles are not expensive to maintain because they are luxurious. They are expensive to maintain because of how many original, ambitious, unproven ideas the engineers were allowed to put into them, and how many of those ideas are buried behind something else. Air suspension instead of springs. A twin-scroll turbo tucked in the valley of a V6 where you cannot reach it. A water pump driven off the timing chain, inside the engine. 2 extra computers to manage things a cable used to manage. None of that is luxury. You cannot feel a single one of those decisions from the driver's seat on the way to the pharmacy. What you can feel is the bill 8 years later when the labor time on a $500 part is 9 hours. The vehicles on this list are cheap to keep for the opposite reason. They are mechanically conservative. Boring, if you like. They share their bones with mass-market vehicles built in the millions, which means the parts exist, the independent shops have seen them, and nothing under there is a one-off. That is the thread running through all 5 of these: restraint. Every time you see a low number in this video, look for the boring engineering decision that produced it. Now the second filter, the one nobody publishes honestly. Ease of entry comes down to where your hip lands relative to the ground. The pivot point, what the ergonomics people call the H-point. AARP's guidance is blunt about it. The seat should let you avoid both crouching down and climbing up, and a well-set-up crossover lets you back into the seat the way you'd back into a kitchen chair. The catch is that brochure figures lie to you here, and not on purpose. Cushion compression and suspension deflection can drop the real seated hip point by around 25 to 40 millimeters compared with the spec. Call it 1.5 inches of difference between the number and your body. So I'm not going to read you step-in heights I can't stand behind. What I will tell you is how to measure it yourself with no tools at all, and that's coming in the recap. Number 1 is the vehicle that invented this entire category, and it is still the answer for more people than any other name here. The Lexus RX. 2.5 decades of it now, and it has been the quiet default for exactly this buyer the whole time. Start with the money, because it is genuinely strange. RepairPal rates the RX 350 at 4 out of 5 for reliability, 3rd out of 14 luxury midsize SUVs, with an average annual repair and maintenance cost of $550. By the way, if you drive an SUV and want to keep it reliable for hundreds of thousands of miles without wasting money at the repair shop, I put together a guide called the 500K Mile Car Care Bible. It covers 101 habits that can help your SUV last longer, the warning signs you should never ignore, and how to spot mechanic upsells that quietly drain your wallet. To get your copy, just scan the QR code on screen with your phone's camera or grab it from the first pinned comment below. The class average is $807 and the average across every vehicle they track. Every economy sedan, every pickup, everything is $650. Read that again. The luxury crossover is cheaper to keep than the average of all cars. Zoom out to the brand and it gets more lopsided. CarEdge puts a typical Lexus at about $7,110 in maintenance and repairs across the first 10 years, roughly $5,120 below the luxury brand average, with an 18.75% chance of needing a major repair in that decade. And they count anything over $500 in parts and labor as major. The same outfit's 10-year figures come out near $16,000 for BMW and around $12,900 for Mercedes-Benz. Those are estimates, not prophecies, and I'll come back to how much weight they deserve. But the shape of it is not controversial. Why, though? That's the part worth your time. The current RX rides on the same architecture as the Toyota Highlander family, which means bushings, cooling parts, and alternators are shared with a vehicle sold in enormous numbers and priced accordingly. The 4-cylinder turbo in the current 350 is a 275 horsepower engine that has been through a lot of different products before this one. Not thrilling, thoroughly known. Then there is the servicing itself, and here's a detail almost nobody outside the trade knows. On the Lexus and Toyota engines that require 0W20 synthetic, the factory oil change interval is 10,000 miles or 12 months, not 3,000. On engines where that oil is merely optional rather than required, you're still on 5,000 mile changes even if you use it, and short trips in the cold, dusty roads, towing, or a lot of idling drops you back to 5,000 regardless. Worth knowing which camp your specific vehicle is in because the 5,000 mile visit never went away either. Tire rotation and fluid checks still live there. For the hybrid, the number that matters is the one people are most frightened of. From the 2020 model year, Lexus extended hybrid battery coverage to 10 years from first use or 150,000 miles, and it covers the first owner and every owner after. The rest of the hybrid hardware, control modules, inverter, sits at 8 years or 100,000 miles. If you are buying a 5-year-old RX hybrid, you are buying 5 years of remaining battery coverage that came with the car and not with the person who ordered it. That is unusual and it is worth real money. Honest caveats because I'm not selling these. Buy the smaller wheel option if you have the choice. The tires on a 20-inch wheel will quietly cost you more over 10 years than the difference in any maintenance table on this list. Oil seepage shows up in owner reports as these age, so look at the front of the engine on anything with mileage. And a hybrid that sits unused for long stretches needs more attention to battery health than one that gets driven, which matters more to a retired owner doing 4,000 miles a year than to a commuter. If that's your driving pattern, the plain gas RX is arguably the smarter buy and you'll save the hybrid premium. Entry and exit is where the RX earns the rest of its reputation. Wide door aperture, seat at a natural sitting height rather than a step up, and a load floor you don't have to lift over. The one thing to check with your own eyes is over-shoulder visibility, because the rear pillars are thick on the current shape. So that's the safe answer. Now the one that beats it on paper, and where I'm going to argue against my own numbers. Number 2 is the Acura RDX, and it holds a title I don't think most people would guess. RepairPal rates the RDX 4.5 out of 5 and ranks it first out of 11 luxury compact SUVs at an average $497 a year. Its class average is $859. That's not a small gap, that's a different sport. Owners average 0.4 unscheduled shop visits a year, which matches the average for all vehicles rather than the average for luxury ones. Brand-wide, Acura sits second out of 32, makes it about $501 a year, with an 8% chance of any given repair being a severe one. Same explanation as the RX, different parent company. It's a Honda underneath, and Honda's 4-cylinder turbo and torquey converter automatic in this thing are about as well understood as modern hardware gets. The engine and transmission have a long-run durability record, and routine service prices stay reasonable because there is nothing exotic to service. For an older driver, the RDX has real virtues. It sits at a genuinely easy height, the doors open wide, the seats are supportive in a way that matters on a 2-hour drive, and there's proper physical space around the driver. And then there's the infotainment. Acura fitted these with a touchpad on the console that maps to the screen instead of a touchscreen or a rotary knob. You slide your finger on a pad, a cursor moves on a display up on the dash. The idea was that you'd keep your hand low and your eyes up. In practice, it asks for fine motor precision on a moving surface while you're driving, and it has been one of the most complained about interfaces in the business since it arrived. Now, I want to be careful here, because this is my read and not a measured fact. I have no crash study in front of me that says a touchpad is worse for a 70-year-old than a knob. What I have is a lot of time watching people with less feeling in their fingertips than they used to have trying to make a cursor land on a small target. If that's you, or it's heading that way, go and sit in one for 15 minutes and change the radio station 4 times before you sign anything. Nothing else on this list has a cheaper running cost. Nothing else on this list has a control system I'd flag this hard, which brings up the thing you may have noticed already. 2 entries in, and both of the cheap ones are Japanese cars with American mass-market cousins. That is not a coincidence, and it is not brand loyalty, it's the whole mechanism of this video. Low ownership cost comes from parts volume and engineering restraint, full stop. From here, the list gets more interesting, because the next 3 all break that pattern in some way. One is an American semi-luxury SUV with numbers so good they're contested, one is the smallest and simplest thing here, and one is a Korean SUV that hands you free servicing and then puts a fence around its own headline warranty. Number 3 is the Buick Envision, and I put it here for a reason that has nothing to do with the badge and everything to do with who Buick actually builds for. Physical climate knobs, a quiet cabin, soft ride, upright seating, a dashboard you can operate without learning anything. Buick has for decades been the brand that didn't insist you enjoy being challenged by your own car, and for a lot of people in their 70s, that is not a compromise. That's the point. The numbers are where it gets messy, and this is the promise I made you in the first 90 seconds. One widely cited RepairPal figure puts the Envision's average annual maintenance at $233, and another rundown of the same source has it at $318 total annually against a $494 midsize SUV average, with only a 5% chance of a repair being severe. Those are astonishing figures for anything with a premium badge. Except go to RepairPal's own reliability page for the Envision and it says something different. There is no reliability rating for the Envision because there isn't enough repair data to be statistically significant, and the number they'll give you is the class average of $573 a year. So which is it? Here's my honest position. I take the conservative figure. A $233 a year vehicle almost certainly means a vehicle that hasn't been in the fleet long enough or in enough numbers to generate expensive data. Yet, not a vehicle that has beaten physics. What I'll stand behind instead is the brand-level picture, which is legitimately good. RepairPal has Buick at $600 a year against 650 tiers across all models. And Buick was named the top mainstream brand in J.D. Power's 2025 U.S. Vehicle Dependability Study. That's a real result from a real study, and it's the reason this thing is on the list. 2 things to know before you shop one. The Envision was the first Buick built in China and sold in the US market, which matters to some buyers and not at all to others, but you should hear it from me rather than discover it. And there have been 9 recalls on the model, the most common involving daytime running lights that don't switch off with the headlights on, fixed with a body control module software update at no charge. Free to fix, not free to ignore. Quick housekeeping while we're at the halfway shelf. If you're still with me, you're the person this channel is actually for. Somebody who wants the arithmetic rather than the highlight reel. If this has been useful so far, subscribing costs you nothing and keeps this sort of thing coming across your feed. Because we still have 2 to go, and the last one is where the money gets genuinely clever at your expense. Number 4 is the Lexus NX, and I'm going to be quick with it because it's the same argument in a smaller box. Compact, tighter to park, easier to see out of, and mechanically it's the RAV4 family underneath, which is about as mass-produced as machinery gets. Refined cabin, good economy, and the 4-cylinder options are cheaper to service long-term than most of the turbocharged competition. The hybrid is the one I'd buy. There's a reasonable argument going around that hybrid systems can actually be easier on the mechanical parts because the electric side absorbs load the engine and brakes would otherwise take. I find that plausible, and my own experience with worn-out brake pads on hybrids supports it, but treat it as a working theory rather than settled fact. The trade-off is honest and simple. Less room and a lower roofline than the RX. Sit in both back-to-back. Number 5 is a Genesis, and this is the one with a hook in it. The GV70 is a legitimately fine piece of work. Quiet, beautifully finished, physical knobs where you want them, and a seating position that suits a person who'd rather not clamber. And Genesis competes on ownership terms in a way the Germans simply refuse to. Look at what comes with it. A 5-year, 60,000-mile bumper-to-bumper warranty, a 10-year, 100,000-mile powertrain warranty, 7 years of corrosion coverage with no mileage cap, 5 years of unlimited mileage roadside assistance, and 3 years or 36,000 miles of complimentary scheduled maintenance. That free servicing covers oil changes, filters, tire rotations and inspections, and the valet program will collect the vehicle from your house, do the work, bring it back, and leave you a loaner in the meantime. For somebody who'd rather not spend a morning in a waiting room, that last one is worth more than any spec on the sheet. On 10-year maintenance, CarEdge has Genesis around $7,591, third among luxury brands. Read the small print though, because it is doing real work. The complimentary maintenance does not include alignment, balancing, brake fluid flushes, or coolant replacement. Those are yours to pay for. And here is the loop I promised you at the top. That 10-year, 100,000-mile powertrain warranty belongs to the original owner only. It does not transfer. If the vehicle changes hands, the second owner falls back to the 5-year, 60,000-mile coverage. If you leased it and then bought out your own lease, you keep the full term. Think about what that means in practice. The number on every advertisement, the figure that made you feel safe about a Korean luxury SUV in the first place, is a number that mostly serves the person who buys new and quietly evaporates for the retired buyer picking up a tidy 3-year-old example. It's not hidden, it's printed. But it is never the part anyone says out loud, and it is precisely the sort of clause that decides whether a used purchase is a bargain or a gamble. That's the whole list. Now the part I actually want you to remember, because it will cost or save you more than any choice between these 5. Somewhere in the next few years, if you buy one of these, 2 different people are going to try to sell you protection from a bill that the numbers in this video say you are probably never going to get. The first is sitting in a small office at the dealership after you've agreed on the price when you're tired and the pen is already in your hand. The pitch has a shape to it. Modern luxury vehicles are complicated. Out of warranty, one repair can run 4 figures. For a little a month, you can stop worrying. Notice what just happened. The person telling you how frightened you should be is the person selling you the cure, and they are working on commission. That's not a conspiracy, it's an incentive, and it's the whole business model of that room. Now do the arithmetic on you. Consumer Reports surveyed more than 12,000 subscribers who had bought an extended warranty and found 55% never used it for a single repair over the life of the policy, against a median price of just over $1,200. Among the people who did use it, median savings came to $837, a net loss of more than $375. Count the people who never claimed and the median saving was 0. And only about a quarter said they'd definitely buy one again. Then there's the detail that should end the conversation for anyone watching this particular video. In an earlier Consumer Reports survey on the same question, the owners who lost the most money on extended warranties were Lexus and Toyota owners, around $600 and $550 on average. Of course they were. The better your vehicle, the worse the contract, because you are buying insurance against an event that your specific vehicle mostly doesn't have. And they'll sell it to you hardest for the very cars that need it least, because those are the cars people are proud of and nervous about. The second person doesn't wait for you to visit a dealership. They call your house. And this is where it stops being a bad deal and starts being a crime. The FCC handed down a $299,997,000 fine, the largest in its history, against a network of companies behind more than 5 billion scam auto warranty robocalls placed to over 500 million phone numbers in 2021. The agency's finding was that the operation had been running since at least 2018, selling vehicle service contracts under the false claim that they were auto warranties. 2 of the central figures were already under lifetime bans on making telemarketing calls from earlier federal and state actions. They spoofed the phone numbers of hospitals, which sent confused people ringing the hospitals to complain and tied up public safety lines. After the FCC ordered carriers to stop carrying that traffic, those particular calls dropped by 99%. Sit with the language for a second, because the language is the whole trick. A warranty is a promise from whoever built the thing. What was being sold on those calls was a service contract from a third party you have never heard of, with an exclusion list you never read, and the word warranty was doing all the persuading. The regulator's own description was that the operation deceptively marketed it as car warranties while actually generating leads for vehicle service contracts. Same trick in both places. Both times, somebody who profits from your fear decides how afraid you should be. The finance office is legal and the robocall isn't, and the sentence they say to you is nearly identical. So here's what changes for you. You now know that the $550 a year vehicle and the $1,200 contract are numbers you can hold in the same hand. 2 years of that contract buys more than 4 years of the RX's average maintenance and repairs. When somebody offers to protect you from a bill, ask them what the bill actually averages, and if they don't know the number, they aren't a specialist. They're a salesman with a script. Let me step back from the money for a minute, because there's something underneath all this that I think matters more. Choosing a vehicle at 70 is a different skill than choosing one at 35, and it's a harder one. At 35, you're buying for how it makes you feel. At 70, you're buying for how your body will be in 8 years, which requires you to be honest with yourself about something nobody enjoys being honest about. That's not a sad thing. It's an act of judgment, and judgment is the last skill to arrive and the best one to have. And the judgment being asked of you here is fine-grained. Not which is best, but which set of trade-offs suits the life you're actually living. A vehicle that costs $300 a year less to maintain, but takes 2 hands and a wince to get out of is the wrong vehicle. And no spreadsheet will tell you that. A vehicle with a magnificent warranty that doesn't transfer to you is a magnificent warranty for somebody else. The good news is that this particular decision rewards the sort of thinking people get better at with age. Slow, specific, skeptical of anybody in a hurry. Read the clause. Sit in the seat 5 times. Ask what the number is. That's not being difficult. That's being the kind of buyer who doesn't get sold to, and it's a habit worth having on far more than cars. Right? Here's the whole thing, in order, plus the procedure I use instead of a rule of thumb. The Lexus RX as the default answer, around $550 a year and hybrid battery coverage that follows the vehicle rather than the buyer. The Acura RDX as the cheapest on paper, first of 11 at $497, go and use the touchpad before you commit. The Buick Envision for physical knobs and a soft ride with brand-level dependability behind it and a model-level figure I'd treat with suspicion. The Lexus NX if the RX is more vehicle than you need. And the Genesis GV70 for the free servicing and the valet, remembering that the headline 10-year powertrain cover stays with the first owner. Now the procedure, and I'd write this one down. Before you buy anything, get the manufacturer's maintenance schedule out of the owner's manual, not the dealer's service menu, which is a different document with a different purpose. Find the 3 big service milestones on it and phone one independent shop for a price on each. Second, price a set of 4 tires in the exact wheel size on the exact vehicle in front of you, because that single line usually swamps every maintenance difference on this list. Third, ask 2 questions in writing. Does the powertrain warranty transfer, and does any battery or hybrid coverage transfer? Fourth, if it has a camera behind the windshield, know that replacing that glass means recalibrating the camera, and it is not a cheap job. Budget accordingly rather than being surprised. Then the entry test, which costs nothing. Get in and out 5 times in a row. Do it wearing the coat and shoes you actually wear in February, not showroom clothes. Put whatever you carry, the cane, the walker, the folding chair, into the cargo area yourself, and note whether you had to lift it over a lip. Reach the tailgate. Turn your head and look over your right shoulder. And the deciding rule, if the projected 10-year cost gap between your 2 finalists is smaller than the price of 1 set of tires, throw the spreadsheet away and choose on entry height and controls. It is. Almost always it is. Do that, and here's what you get. Nothing happens. No Tuesday morning phone call telling you it'll be $3,000 and they can start Thursday. The bill you were bracing for simply never arrives year after year, and you slowly stop bracing. Now, I want to hear from the people who've actually lived this. If you own one of these, tell me the year, the mileage, and the biggest single repair bill you've paid in dollars. Not it's been great, the number. That's the only data that beats a projection, and there are people reading these comments right now trying to make this exact decision with their own money. And if you've got more time under one of these than I have, come and correct me. I mean it. I've been wrong about a vehicle's weak point before, and found out from somebody in the comments who'd replaced 11 of the part I said never fails. There's one thing I deliberately left alone in this video, and it's been bothering me for a while. What a modern crossover actually costs to insure and register once you're past 75, because the ownership figures everybody quotes stop at maintenance and repairs, and that's not where the money goes. I don't have that fully pinned down yet. When I do, you'll hear it here, so stick around if you'd rather know than guess. Keep the receipts, read the clause before you sign it, and don't let anybody sell you fear at $1,200 a throw. I'll see you next time.